All right. Good morning, everybody. We're going to be talking about free speech a little bit this morning, and we're going to be talking about free speech in Britain in particular, and looking at the world at large. Uh, Now, the article that we're going to look at from Revolver is talking more about a sort of universal ID situation, but stick with me and I'll tie the threads all together. So this article right here is from Okay, button. I push the button. You're supposed to do the thing when I push the button. There you are. Free speech row threatens to derail Starmer's talks with Trump on state visit. So this is back from the beginning of September. I think this article was from the 19th. Under siege, Keir Starmer is facing a showdown with Donald Trump over free speech in the UK, which could derail crucial talks during the U.S. president's state visit. When they say that the UK is facing criticism here, let me ask ChatGPT how many people have been arrested for speech violations in the UK this year. Because let's be real, if the answer to that question is anything other than zero, then you don't have free speech. Right? Now, and I'm not talking about, when we talk about free speech in this context, we're not talking about making active threats of violence, right? This is a complex conversation to have, because even a free speech absolutist, it gets tricky. If you're a total free speech absolutist, then maybe you argue for all kinds of smut, pornography, etc., to be covered as artistic expression, for example. But even as a free speech absolutist, one must concede that there is speech that is meant to incite, right? If you run up on a bunch of dudes in baggy pants with blue handkerchiefs hanging out of their pockets and start dropping hard R's, well, it could reasonably be said that you were intentionally asking for a fight, right? It's not the words you used; it's the obvious intent that was with them. Similarly, if you're posting flyers that say things like, "Hey, fascist, catch," and then explicitly saying the John Brown Gun Club celebrates when Nazis die. Many of us might celebrate when Nazis die. That would be an interesting thought experiment to run if we lived in a world that had Nazis in it. There aren't any. So let's see. What did she come up with? It's hard to pin down reliable figures to date, but on average, for the last several years, since 2003, the British have locked up or have conducted 12,000 arrests per year for online messages deemed offensive, menacing, or otherwise in breach of communications offenses. Now, when we say that, and this is why I was talking about the point of inciting language, they're arresting people for, most famously, Count Dankula was arrested for teaching his little pug to do the Nazi Roman salute. Hey, good morning, Emerson. Good to see you, little buddy. We need to get you guys back down here sometime soon. Dad and I got back in the woods and cleared away that one big tree that was across the path, so you kids can get all the way back in the clearing. It's a much better piece of property back there. Patrick asks, are you going to cover those two shootings this week? There have been several shootings to cover. I'm not sure which two in particular you're talking about, Patrick. Give me a call after the show and we can discuss that. So, around 12,000 arrests a year in the UK over speech. And like I was saying before, Megan distracted me with one of her kids. We're talking about people saying things that are politically disagreeable, people being arrested for criticizing government policy. We're not talking about somebody going on X and saying, hey, Charlie Kirk's giving a speech at a campus, somebody should go and murder him, right? Now, that's a little, there's the line there gets a little less blurry, right? Now, even that, in fairness, even that under the law currently, without naming a particular person and giving a direct instruction, gets a little fuzzy under the law. But my point is, it's very different. Somebody being arrested for saying, hey, there's a person here that I want to see dead on social media, versus what you're getting arrested for in the UK, which is things like, babies have a right to survive pregnancy. Famously, we covered earlier this year that in the UK, they were arresting people for praying silently near abortion clinics. We're talking down the street, a block away, praying silently for the children that are being murdered in the clinic. Right? And what's bizarre, something that's bizarre there, abortion laws are much stricter outside of the U.S. Right? The libs love to say, "Oh, we should be more like this European country. We should be more like the Chinese on this thing. We should be more like these people on this thing." Outside of the U.S., like if I understand it correctly, the U.S. is one of the only places in the world where you've got anybody arguing for like post-birth abortions. Like what was it, Governor the Virginia, the governor of Virginia talked real. So we'll bring them out and we'll make the child comfortable and then have a discussion about how to proceed. Northam was his name. That guy that was about to sign a law that said, you know what? If a mother appears to be mentally, physically, emotionally, or financially unfit and incapacitated due to the use of whatever kind of painkiller drugs were administered through the course of the delivery, the doctor can say, this woman is unfit, right? So the doctor can literally say, this woman is broke, and because of her state of incapacity, I will make the medical decision for her that she can't afford this child, and therefore I will terminate the child on her behalf. Yes. That is the kind of shit that they go for. And yet we are still freer in this country, right? That's a total tangent from the actual topic. It's a total tangent from the actual topic. Anyway, so while he was here for so back to that article. Senior Washington sources have told The Independent that free speech is now top of the president's agenda when he visits Chequers on Thursday for talks with Prime Minister at the end of his trip. And Starmer, this smug shit, has been struck by one scandal after another, but the Prime Minister is now facing the talks without his key man after sacking Lord Mandelson as ambassador to the U.S. on Friday over revelations about his relationship with the disgraced former financier and convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Oh! So up in the top of the communist government of the essentially communist infiltrated government of the UK, we've got Epstein clients falling off all of a sudden. Sure enough. But anyway, so the Donald gave Starmer a hard time about free speech, and Starmer got all, of course we have free speech. Free speech is a British principle. The Americans adopted the principle of free speech from the British. Actually, no. Actually, that's not the case. Actually, the fact is, yes, a lot of American law is rooted in what is called English common law. Right? A lot of what we have instantiated in law, and even what we based many of the legal principles on which the Constitution was written, is rooted in English common law. Free speech, however, is not one of those principles. That is among the reasons that it is the First Amendment. Because when we revolted, when we threw off the shackles of the monarchy and said we will no longer be subjects to the whims of your corrupted and abusive and absentee monarch, and we will found a new nation of, for, and by the people, because the government of old has become destructive of those ends of prosperity and liberty which we seek to secure to ourselves and our posterity. One of the things that we did not have was the freedom to criticize the king, or the freedom to practice religion, or the freedom to assemble peaceably for the purpose of criticizing the king or any other aspect of his government, right? We did not have the right to publish pamphlets that were critical of the government. So when shitbirds like Starmer try to argue that America has adopted the First Amendment, has adopted free speech from great British tradition, no. Let's be very clear. There's a sentiment around the world right now that everywhere in the world, freedom is being eroded. And there's truth to that. It is, in fact, the case that all freedom around the world is being slowly eroded over time. The entire world is less free than it was yesterday. And yesterday it was less free than the day before. That's a fact. But there's this kind of, people seem to have this kind of feeling, this kind of sense that what's happening is that all of the liberty in the world is kind of shrinking to a point that is the United States, and that we are the last bastion of freedom on the planet. And in a way, that is true. While our freedoms are being eroded here in the United States by government corruption and the fascisti of interrelationships between large companies and the federal government, right? We saw the letter from Google last week where they just outright admitted, it came out essentially a signed confession from the conspirators that the Biden administration used the levers of government and the levers of the intelligence community to pressure Google and Alphabet and YouTube into censoring conservative speech, into censoring dissenting speech, into basically conducting things like the adpocalypse, throwing conservatives off the air, and attempting to interfere with the political process to prevent Donald Trump from being elected a third time. And hey, there's a good argument to be made that Donald Trump should not have been allowed to run in 2024, because we do have a constitutional amendment that clearly says that nobody's allowed to win the presidency 3 times. You're only allowed to win the presidential election twice. I'd have loved to see him make that argument before. But the Pitt Danny points out it didn't take much pressure. While that may be true, let me just say that if you hire an assassin who just happens to be the aggrieved lover of the target or something like that, you hire an assassin who just happened to have been ripped off by the target. Yeah, right. Go out. You find instead of hiring a professional, you hire an assassin who wants to commit the murder anyway, and you pay him to do it, and he does it at your direction. You are still a part of that conspiracy. Doesn't matter if the bad guy wanted to be a bad guy or not. If you're in the conspiracy, you're in it. You are in it. And I use that word conspiracy advisedly here. By the way, understand, we hear the word conspiracy theory, and this is intentional, right? You know, Bernays taught us about marketing, and our intelligence community took that shit to heart. The Democrats of the CIA very intentionally used the term conspiracy, created the branding, the label conspiracy theory. Right, the reason you see television shows, the reason you have an idea in your head of the cork board with the strings on it and the tinfoil hat and the whole crazy thing around the word conspiracy theorist is because you have been manipulated by media, by propaganda to have that psychological reaction when you hear the word conspiracy, not just conspiracy theory, conspiracy theorist. Right, but the word conspiracy. But let's be clear. A conspiracy is when two or more entities conspire to do a thing. And in the case, and in a conspiracy, it is irrelevant what the hierarchical relationship between those agents is. So if you've got an assassin, right, he doesn't make the he doesn't make the choice. He doesn't pick the target. He just, somebody wants somebody dead, and he hires an assassin. The thing that happens between them is a conspiracy. They have conspired together to cause a crime to occur, right? And a conspiracy doesn't necessarily have to be a crime either. Even that is a bit of blended Russell conjugation to manipulate the way that you think about the activity. Patrick and I could take my griddle out to the corner and start flipping cheeseburgers to sell, and we would be engaged in a conspiracy to feed the people. No negative connotation to the action at all, but the word carries that emotional coloring. So in the wake of Keir Starmer having said that, obviously we have free speech in Britain. It's a British principle. So basically, fuck you. You're a fucking liar. British, the UK, Canada, all five of the Five Eyes, with the sole exception of the United States, have a body of law which does not include an analog to the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. They do not have free speech, free association, freedom of assembly. It doesn't exist. And that is being eroded even further as they go on to adopt panopticon Orwellian tactics, not dissimilar to the Chinese social credit score, as UK goes Orwellian with mandatory digital ID and biometric tracking. Okay, and the argument that the lefties are making in the UK now is that this is just the next logical step. Well, hey, you conservatives wanted everybody to have an ID to vote. You wanted voter ID. Hold the fuck on a minute. How's about if you want to voluntarily not be a voter, you can choose to not have an ID. There's a big difference between there is a requirement to entry to engage in a voluntary activity versus the fact of by dint of your existence, the government has a requirement for you, right? I mean, this is Mark of the Beast shit. Go back to 1995, 96, right? Bill Clinton's still in office. Hillary Clinton is pushing for the prototype of Obamacare, what they called Hillary Care, and a major backlash. And it's amazing to me that it's hard to find stuff on this on the internet. It's hard to find any information about Hillary Care on the internet now. But I know that some of you were old enough to remember the mid-90s and everything about Hillary Care. And what was one of the major backlashes that stopped Hillary Care from getting across the line? Excuse me. The Clinton Foundation, the Clintons, were involved in funding a research company that was creating these microchips. These subdermal implant microchips, that the theory was that they would have your identifying information on it and your medical information and your financial information. So, they were pushing hard too. It's like, guys, imagine how cool this will be. It'd be like one of those medical alert bracelets that you can never take off. You have a heart attack, and you're maybe you're at a business meeting where you don't know the people, so you're not like with your wife or your kids or somebody that knows that you're allergic to penicillin, and you fall down and bump your head or whatever. So some stranger calls the ambulance. They come and they can scan your chip. It'll save lives because they'll be able to see that you're allergic to XYZ medication or you have this or that history of something. Excuse me. And the idea was that if you were born in an American hospital after the year 2000, you would have the chip installed on you. That would be mandatory. If you were born in an American hospital, you would have the chip installed. That was a component of the Hillary Care plan. And Christian evangelicals started screaming, "That's some mark of the beast shit." Well, this is some mark of the beast shit. And so you're going to walk around with it in your pocket instead of stamped on your forehead, right? For now, right? When the government says the mandatory ID based on the UK1 login system will help to stop illegal immigrants from crossing the channel by denying them access to work. How about this? How about just stop them? Donald Trump came into office in February of 2025. It is now creeping up on Halloween, and sure enough, the border has dried up. Now, we still have a massive problem with hostile foreign invaders in this country that need to be returned, but the number of illegal border crossings has dropped to nearly zero, statistically zero. That did not take the issuance of some new ID. We didn't all have to get barcodes tattooed on our forearms, right? We didn't have to convert the United States into one giant concentration camp, right? We didn't have to start tattooing our social security numbers on our foreheads or get subdural V-chip implants, etc. Right? Yeah. It's difficult. It's difficult to find the information because it has intentionally been memory hold. Plus, we're talking about stuff that happened in the mid '90s when the internet was not quite so prolific. But a lot of it's been intentionally memory hold. But the fact is that the companies that exist now that put the implants in your pets so that they can track the pets. Those companies exist because Hillary Care failed, and the companies that spent the several $billion on the research and development, and then actually started producing the chips because they thought they were going to get to put them in every human being, and this might be a good reason to resist suspicious vaccines. They had to do something with all those chips. And so they started selling them to vet clinics. Christ is King says Trump needs to stop being so friendly with the weft puppet Starmer. Agreed. Agreed. What we need to do is select the most conservative, like traditionally American conservative possible candidates in every country on the planet, and then make the public statement, hey, all U.S. aid is now contingent on the victory of this candidate in your next election. I mean, straight up foreign election interference. Hey, you... And there are some places we need to look at. Like, we need to run a bomber over North Korea that drops pamphlets that say the U.S. will stop providing food aid to North Korea until such a time as the Kim regime has been deposed. Bring Kim Jong-un's skull to the DMZ, and we will restore your food aid. Hey, Great Britain, hey, UK, we are going to stop subsidizing your military security and your national health program until Starmer is removed from office. Until you have a constitution that guarantees free speech and the right to keep and bear arms to your people. Right? In fact, let's take it that far. Let's just say, hey, if you want to continue getting food aid, medical aid, military aid, any aid that is provided by U.S. taxpayer dollars, first you must overthrow your existing government and adopt the U.S. Constitution as your own national sovereign law. You don't have to become a territory of the United States. You just have to start conducting business our way. Right? I think that would do the trick. All right. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up there, guys. I appreciate y'all tuning in this morning. We love you. Y'all be safe out there. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.